played a gig before, Michelle, and you were singing, correct?
Yes.
In your gig, yeah?
Yes.
So you haven't actually played guitar live?
No.
In front of anyone? Anyone else?
No.
Cool. I'm guessing because you're all here, you want to start gigging, or you're interested in the idea of gigging. Am I correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. What I might do, I'll give you guys my notes. And if you have any questions, just while I'm talking, because I'm just going to be doing a lot of talking today, feel free to put your hands up. But hopefully I'll cover everything that you guys need to know. So, grab that one. Michelle.
Thanks.
Cool. So I guess the first thing you want to do is work out what sort of gig you want to start playing, or what you want to aim for. So you probably want to start small. You want to start with like busking gigs or something to just ease you into it a little bit. Bars and cafes are good to start with as well, because usually you don't have a huge audience there to like put you off at all. Functions and corporate gigs are probably a little bit further up the chain. Or you might want to do all of the above, so you can sort of work through it step by step. And hands up, who here plays acoustic guitar over electric guitar? Who here plays electric guitar over acoustic? Do you guys, Zoe, do you play guitar at all? Or? Yep. Louisa, you play more acoustic, don't you? Yep. What sort of guitar do you play, Zoe? Acoustic, cool. So I guess that's sort of going to influence what sort of gigs you'll sort of start with as well. And the other thing to keep in mind is whether you want to do solo performances or group performances. So if you think you can start gigging yourself, I guess ideally you'd want to be able to sing while you can play. Is anyone here a singer? Obviously Michelle. Zoe, do you sing as well?
No.
Okay. Ryan, you a singer at all?
Reese. No.
Sorry, Reese. Sorry. So not a singer?
No.
Yeah. I'm not a singer either, so solo gigs I'm not hugely experienced with, but I can talk a little bit about it because I've sort of, been in that sort of circle with some solo musicians as well. So if you're an acoustic guitarist, I guess you're on a good start for playing some solo gigs, because it's a bit easier to carry a gig with an acoustic guitar than just with an electric. As I said, singing and playing helps. If you can sing and play, that means you can cover the melody and the chords as well simultaneously, so you don't sort of have to just rely on your guitar playing. You can sort of carry a song with sort of two instruments, with your voice being one of them. If you're a more advanced guitar player, you can also try some solo arrangements of songs, combining the chords and the melody together. I've got an example of this. So Tommy Emmanuel does a version of the Beatles' Day Tripper. And so what he does is he plays sort of the main riff, he plays the chords, and he plays the vocal melody all at the same time, just on one guitar. See how he's combining the different parts together. Obviously that's a little bit more advanced. It might be a little bit beyond what you guys can do at the moment, but I guess that's sort of the thing with solo guitar. You sort of have to be quite accomplished at the instrument before you can sort of, I guess, carry a performance like that. There are some easier examples as well. I might show you just another one. This is In a Sentimental Mood by Duke Ellington. It's a guitar arrangement. Again, chords and melodies sort of brought together into the one thing. It's a little bit jazzy over this one. So that sort of thing's probably better for like background music. So if you're sort of playing again, like cafes and bars and that sort of thing, and you're not really, I guess, carrying like a full-on performance in front of a big audience, you can sort of get away with that sort of thing. A little bit easier to manage as well for the playing aspect. Yeah, so playing solo gigs can be difficult without any kind of vocals, but it's something to work towards. Group and band gigs, that's probably the better option for those starting out because you can sort of team up with some other musicians. Makes it a bit easier on you, takes the pressure off a little bit. Would you say that's something that you guys would be more interested in, doing sort of band-related performances? Yep. So you've got a few options with that. You can pair up with a singer. So again, you can sort of take the idea of you singing, but put it on someone else. So someone else will be singing, and you can just cover the guitar parts to the same effect. The good thing with a singer as well is they can add other instruments, so they can add like percussion or even a second guitar. And that's the other option that you've got, is you can just do 2 guitars. You can do arrangements for 2 guitars. Again, I've got a couple of examples of those. You probably know what 2 guitars sound like together, but again, something like this. One guitar sort of playing chords and arpeggios, and another guitar sort of playing melodies. So that sort of thing's a good thing to look at as well. I guess the third option is to actually go and find a full band and see if you can either, I guess, join a band or set one up yourself. Puts less pressure on you as a performer, and is a really good experience playing with other people, obviously, because you get to sort of I guess, share that journey with some other musicians, some like-minded people. So an example would be like a standard rock band. You could have 1 or 2 guitarists, 1 bass guitar, 1 drummer, a singer, maybe a keyboard player. I guess that's sort of the standard setup for a rock band. You can go as small as a 3-piece if you don't feel like sort of getting involved in a band that big. Maybe you can get the singer playing an instrument, so you can still have like 4 parts, but you can only have, you only need 3 people. Playing cover songs can be easier with a full band because you can sort of, I guess, easily replicate what's going on the original recordings, because you'll probably have all the instruments that you need, which I just listed. Finding a band well, Michelle, you've been in a band before. Rex, anyone else? Reese? No? You guys? Cool. I guess, yes, so it's sort of a thing where it helps to just know people. If you have contacts, and you guys sort of already would, being music students here, myself and Ben and Mitch, and the other students as well. Or if you know any other people in the music industry, they can get you in touch with other musicians too. Maybe just see if any of your friends play instruments through schools, etc. If you're serious about like networking and that sort of thing, you might want to sort of have more of a social media presence, maybe create some business cards, your own website perhaps, sort of put yourself online. Check out, if you want to find a band as well, check out some of the online forums like Melband. Has anyone used Melband before or heard of it? Cool. So that's a good one. Or any sort of Melbourne-based musician Facebook groups, that sort of thing. You can find a lot of like-minded people on those ones as well. So yeah, put yourself out there basically. Once you get to that point and you have a few people that you can play with, finding gigs is probably the next thing. Although you probably want to rehearse a little bit, so we're jumping a little bit ahead here. But in terms of finding gigs, just quickly, you can contact venues to see if they actually have live music. That's an obvious thing. In terms of doing that, check the website, check their social media pages for contact details. If you want to really enter into that circuit, you might want to start with sort of smaller venues, because I guess they'll be a little bit more welcoming to up-and-coming, less experienced musicians, and see what's just in the local area as well to keep it easy. Also, go to gigs, go to other musicians' gigs as well, and that way you can network with musicians and also venue owners, promoters, if you want to find gigs for yourself. It helps to have some, examples of your own playing online. None of that was me, obviously, but I do have some stuff up as well, which I'm too embarrassed to show everybody, but you can probably find it later on if you do a quick Google search. Yes, so that does really help in terms of networking, showing people what you can do. So I guess going back, when you've got your band, or even if you're just performing yourself, you've got to work out what you want to play. And again, it sort of comes back to what sort of gigs you want to do. But I guess if you're just starting out, you're not really sure what kind of gigs you want to play, probably the best thing is to just start learning generic cover songs, which is, I guess, what we do a little bit here. We sort of teach you guys random songs and see what sticks. Again, if you're stuck for any ideas, just ask Ben, Mitch or me, and we can help you learn some of them. I've just put some examples of some good starting songs to start with. So Ed Sheeran, pretty much Ed Sheeran, any Ed Sheeran, but stuff like Shape of You, Castle on the Hill, those sort of songs that people will definitely recognise. Maroon 5, This Love, Moves Like Jagger, those sort of songs. Eric Clapton, Tears in Heaven, if you want to get a little bit more technical with your guitar playing. Does anyone, maybe you guys put your hands up if you know any of these songs, just so I can see. Yep. What's that one, Michelle?
Oh, do I know them?
Oh, sorry, how to play them.
I have played You Really Got Me.
Oh, cool. Yep, awesome. Rick Springfield, Jesse's Girl, Amy Winehouse, Valerie is a good one. Daft Punk, Get Lucky, The Beatles, pretty much any of the Beatles, but the example I've got there, Get Back. Yep, You Really Got Me, The Kinks / Van Halen, depending on which version you want to do. And the Black Keys, Lonely Boy is a good one as well. So those are just some, I guess, starting points. So again, yes, back to what I was saying before. Consider the sort of gigs that you actually want to do. So average sets can range from 30 minutes to an hour, depending on the gig. I guess even less or even more, depending. So it's hard to put a hard figure on it. Small gigs like bars or cafes, you can play pretty much anything that you want to play. But it's a good idea to include some crowd pleasers, so the aforementioned songs, stuff that people will recognise. With functions and corporate gigs, so sort of like bigger gigs, you'll probably want to do something that's a little bit more tailored to the audience that's going to be there. And that's going to be expected of you. So if you're sort of at that level, I guess it's a more professional sort of level of a musician. So you want to be able to provide sort of appropriate entertainment for the event. So be mindful of the audience and the type of venue that you're playing at. So, it's kind of obvious, like for a younger audience, you'll want some more modern stuff, and for an older audience, you want some maybe 60s, 70s, 80s, even, 50s, going back that far as well. So it's pretty self-explanatory, just, using common sense. The other thing to consider is if you're playing background music, acoustic acts and smaller groups are better for this. So again, if you want to sort of do duo stuff, if you want to play some more jazzy music, I guess that's ideal. If you're playing like a sort of a dance, like a dance gig, like if there's a dance floor there, usually you might want a bigger band for that, so you can play some like, I guess, bigger rock songs and funk songs and that sort of thing. Does anyone have any questions so far? I've just been talking at you for 20 minutes. All good?
Yep.
Yes.
Which bands are you in?
Which bands am I in?
Yeah.
I'm in a band called Mad, we're called, and it's a cover band. We haven't actually played any gigs yet because we only just sort of formed like recently, but we've been rehearsing for a while now. Other bands that I'm in a guitar duo called Umbra. We've been doing gigs for a while. I was in a band called Jaspora, which was like a tropical sort of calypso sort of thing. So we were doing like cover songs, but they were sort of calypso standards, so probably not songs that you would have heard of, except for the occasional like Bob Marley or that sort of thing. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I've got a couple of other sort of music projects on the side, but nothing really live, so probably not relevant to what I'm talking about today. But yeah, I've been in a few bands before that as well. played plenty of shows. Yeah, I'm sure Ben's probably got some good stories for live shows as well. I won't put you on the spot now, but because Ben's played overseas, I haven't played overseas before, so I guess that's a whole other thing as well that might be interesting to touch on at some point. So I thought to get you guys a bit involved today, we could do a little bit of an exercise and come up with maybe just a set list for a gig. I've got a couple of options. So you know, this is a situation that you'll be presented with probably when you're looking at playing gigs and stuff. You'll have a demographic, you'll have a venue, you'll have maybe what sort of event that you're playing at. So the two options that I've got here, a younger audience in their 20s and 30s, it's a birthday gig, and there'll be a dance floor. So I guess things to consider would be newer songs, upbeat songs, because it's more of a dance kind of thing. And it's a birthday. I don't know if that really affects the sort of music that you want to play, but it might well do. The other option, if you're not really familiar with a lot of modern music, go for the classics set. So people maybe in their 40s and 50s, and sort of just a generic kind of sports club RSL gig. So maybe because there's 4 of you guys can maybe just pair up, 2 and 2. See if you can come up with like 10. We might just spend like 5 minutes doing this. See if you can come up with like 10 songs for either one of those gigs. I guess you don't have to pair up. If you want to do it yourselves, you can, but it might be easier to get 10 songs together that way. And then once you've come up with them, maybe Ben's just going to hand out some pens so you can write down. All really good choices for a classic rock set. Nice one. So keep those lists handy. How many did you guys get in total, just out of interest, today? Did you end up with getting 10 or more or less? Yeah, cool.
14.
I mean, yeah, nice. So the next thing I was going to say was over-prepare. Have more than you need. So have backup songs in case you run short, because I guess when you're rehearsing, it's not always going to be the same as when you're playing the show. You might play the songs faster. You might find that a song isn't going to work for you'll rock up to the gig, you'll see who's there, what sort of audience you've got. You might find, some of the songs aren't really going to work for who's here, so we might need to cut some, maybe add some in. So you've got maybe just have like a reserve list or something like that is usually a good idea.
You might get lucky and get invited to do an extra set as well.
Yes.
I've done sound for a gig before where my brother's band was playing it and just the night was kicking on, so the venue owner just said, do you want to do another one? And it's great for them because they can negotiate pretty much whatever price they want from you as well.
The more you play, the better. So if you do get the opportunity, make sure you're ready, I guess. It's extra work, but it's worth it. If you're playing like a function or a corporate gig, and not necessarily strictly just those, but be open to the idea of requests. So obviously if you're like a less experienced guitar player and you haven't learned like a whole heap of songs, this can be hard because the chances of you being able to play something that you're asked to be played on the spot might not be very high. But the good thing is with sort of more formal events, you can, like if it is like a function or something, like a birthday or a corporate gig, sometimes you can actually ask for requests before the gig. So corresponding with the person who's managing whatever the event is, and then they can get in touch with whoever's coming to the event and sort of have that correspondence between them, get some ideas for requests, they can pass it back on to you, and then you can sort of get ahead and maybe learn some requests preemptively. So in terms of actually learning songs, it's good that you guys, so a big thing is having music lessons and having someone to actually help you learn the tunes. And it's obviously you guys are all students here except Zoe. You're not a student here, are you?
Yeah.
You are?
No. I'm not.
Okay. Have you had lessons before, like guitar lessons or any kind of music lessons? Yeah, cool. So that can help, even if you're not willing to sort of commit to going into lessons sort of full on, you can just, sign up for some lessons coming up to a gig just to help you learn some songs for that particular occasion. I guess a good thing to do would be to just listen to the songs a lot, become familiar with them. When I say become familiar with them, become familiar with the structure or the form of the song, so the number of verses, chorus, vocal cues, instrumental breaks, bridges, solos, that sort of thing. Just get an idea for how the whole thing sounds, how it all flows together. Particularly if you're playing with a band as well, you want to make sure that everyone's sort of really familiar with the song. Make sure all the band members are working from the same versions of the songs as well, because there can be obviously different versions, cover versions of songs. To make sure that everyone is doing that, maybe set up a Dropbox with MP3 files or send emails with specific YouTube links so everyone is working from the same source. So learning things yourself, obviously, Ben, Mitch, myself can all help you learn some stuff, but if you want to do it yourself, it's really easy to find like tabs and stuff and charts and chords and that sort of thing online. For most semi-popular songs, you can usually just do a Google search and it'll come up pretty quickly. What I like to do is transcribe instead. So does anyone know what transcribing is? I have written it on the sheet as well, so you can just read it there, but has anyone heard that word before? Maybe not even in a musical context. Yeah. In the case of music, writing out the music yourself. So listening to the song and then seeing if you can work out the chords, work out the riffs, all that sort of thing. It's a really good exercise. And it basically means you can improve your oral skills. And you might even pick up on some mistakes in user-made tabs and charts. Usually when I'm looking things up on like Ultimate Guitar, there's always mistakes in there. So it's a good idea to sort of double check it against the recording. Bring whatever written music you have with you to rehearsals. And to the gig itself, even though it might not be necessary at the gig, because you'll probably be at the point where you've rehearsed it enough that you can sort of play it without looking at the music, hopefully. But always bring them as a backstop in case on the night you suddenly have a mind blank and you forget what the chords are, if you forget what you're doing. This is more useful for sort of bigger sets where you've got a lot of material. Smaller sets, it's a little bit easier to remember everything. If you only have like a handful of songs, but if you're playing like 3 sets, it's almost necessary to have the music somewhere nearby, even if you just have like the key of the song written next to it on a set list, because it's really can be tricky to remember all of the keys and all of the chords for all of the songs if you've got like 3 sets to remember. Yeah, so try and commit as much as you can to memory, because it looks better when you're not reading music on stage, as I'm sure you would assume, if you've seen people play before. I guess it depends on the gig. If it's a rock gig, you probably don't want to have like a music stand in front of you. It can look a little bit daggy. Remember to print out or write up your set list, so not necessarily just the songs, the chords and that sort of thing, so the actual names of the songs, so everyone knows what's coming up next in the set if you're in a band, and also for yourself as well, so you can easily remember what's coming up next and the show can run smoothly. When learning songs, be mindful of things such as different keys, different tunings, so this is particularly relevant for guitar players. If you find a recording of a song online, remember there might be different versions, as I said, and that everyone's working from the same version. Luckily, most well-known pop and rock songs can be played in E standard tuning, or drop D tuning, which is really easy to get to, because you only need to retune one string. If you can, for cover gigs, in general, avoid playing songs with more obscure tunings unless you can bring a second guitar that's already tuned to that without having to retune the one guitar that you've got. Bring a second one with you. It's a good idea. If you're playing with a singer as well, this can complicate things a little bit more because you have to consider the vocal range of the singer, even if you're singing yourself. So you might need to change the key of the song to fit what the singer can actually hit, what notes they can hit. So an excellent invention is a capo. So who has a capo here? Does anyone know what a capo is or have one? There might be one floating around somewhere. Yep. So does anyone have one of these
I
at
haven't
home?
used one yet.
Yeah, so basically you can put it, I'll show you. Now if we play an E chord like this, if we put the capo on, this might not fit all the way across, but we'll see. Oh yeah, cool. Means we can play the same chords that we already know, hello, and we can play the same shapes, it'll just sound higher. So if the singer can't hit low notes, you can move all of your chords up without having to change anything that you're necessarily playing. The alternative is to do that, is to change what chords you're using, change whatever shapes you've got, but it's easier with the capo, obviously, because you don't really have to adjust your fingering or anything like that. I guess transposing songs down a key, or down as opposed to up, you can't really do that with the capo, so in that case you might have to tune the whole guitar down or something like that. Anyway, so the more gigs you play, the more songs you'll learn. Ideally, if you sort of keep introducing new songs to your repertoire, you'll build up a decent backlog of material, hopefully. So keep all of the charts that you've got, all of the written music that you've got, keep it all handy, because you'll never know when you're going to have to refer to it for a gig later on. Does anyone have any questions with that stuff? Again, I've just been talking at you for minutes. Anyone? No? That's good. So rehearsing. I mentioned this before, when you find your band, or even just by yourself, but this is mostly, I guess, relevant for band situations. If you're rehearsing with a band, you'll probably want to hire out a rehearsal studio. So for those who have played before, who's sort of had experience doing that? Yeah, Michelle? Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you remember what the studio was that you did?
I forgot to tell Ben this, but the first ever studio I rehearsed in was Soundworks, which is just
Oh,
around
cool.
the corner.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, just over.
Yeah, and there was one in Bayswater North. I can't remember what that was called. There's also a really good one in Knox as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Do you remember what that one is called?
It's in my phone.
Oh, that's okay.
It was only last year that
Yeah.
I was in there, but that's a really good one. It's
Yeah,
cheaper
awesome.
and better facilities.
Cool.
And there was one Ben and I have rehearsed in Ringwood, just on New Street, but
Yep.
it's up 2 flights of stairs.
Okay.
So
nearby here.
yeah, just off Maroondah Highway, but
Yep.
so all the guys with their amps and
Yeah.
Grant with his drums and everything, it was
Stairs can be a killer.
yeah.
Yeah, cool. Well, thanks for that. Yep. So some examples that I thought of that I've been to. Lighting Lab in Box Hill is good. Hydra in Burwood, Crosstown up in Preston, Deluxe down in Moorabbin if you're down that way. They're all quite good. And I believe for this place as well, we can use for rehearsals as well, I guess.
There's a PA down the other end, which you guys, it's a pretty basic one, but
Yeah.
you're always welcome to if you want to.
You've rehearsed with your band here before?
Yeah.
So
So we usually use an electric drum kit to make it a little bit easier, because otherwise if you've got a full drum kit, it's a bit hard to set up each week. But yeah, Mitch has rehearsed here a couple of times and they just have the drummer bring it in and set it up. If the drummer knows what they're doing, it usually only takes sort of 20 minutes. So.
yeah. Is there a certain time that you wouldn't be able to necessarily rehearse just because of noise, or?
Probably because we've usually got lessons running, I guess it's weekdays are the easiest, which doesn't suit for everyone.
Yeah.
But there's always a few, Friday nights or weekend spots that are available too.
Yeah.
Probably just check if ever you want to do it and I can let you know if it's free or not.
Cool. Yeah, so that's another option. Rehearsing at home if you're a smaller act, in the garage, bedroom. If you've got softer music, good for acoustic solos or duos. If you're not really keen on committing to a rehearsal room or anything like that, and keep it easy. The good thing about rehearsal studios is they'll have soundproofed rooms and stuff, and that'll let you crank the volume up if you're sort of in a bigger band. You can sort of see how it all sounds up loud, and it's a good opportunity to test how your guitar and amp tone actually sounds as well, because if you crank it up, it'll generally sound, it'll have a different sound to it than when you play it sort of really quietly at home in your bedroom. That's something you will notice when you turn it up like that, and also when you're playing with other instruments as well. The sound of the guitar will be affected by the mix, the overall mix of the band. You know, having the bass guitar, having the drums, and all that sort of thing. So it's a good opportunity to tweak your settings on your amp or whatever you want to do, so you can sort of hear how it all sounds. Communicating between band members, it's kind of goes without saying, that's pretty important. You've got to make sure everyone knows when and where the rehearsals are, and also the gigs as well, obviously. Maybe designate one person to book a rehearsal room if you are going to do that. Let everyone know the time and the place. A good thing that I always have in the bands that I'm in, we set up Facebook group messages, or if people don't have Facebook, just email threads for this purpose, and just other general sort of band communication. They'll have like a little DI box. You can plug like a guitar lead into that if your guitar has a jack. If your guitar doesn't have a jack, so if it doesn't have the plug for the lead, you might need to play with sort of a mic position near the guitar, just to amplify you a little bit. But if the performing space is small enough, you might not even need any kind of amplification or mic or anything like that. So if it's like a small cafe or something, you might not really need speakers or an amp or anything, which is always good, because then you can just bring your guitar to the gig and nothing else. If you're an electric guitarist, it's a little bit more complicated. You will need a guitar amp. So who has a guitar amp here, even if it is just like a little practice one, like a Black Stars? Yeah. Reese, have you got an amp at all?
Yeah.
Yep.
The Fender one.
Yeah.
Just one of the starter kit ones.
Like, is it sort of this size, or is it one of the sort of the bigger?
It's like that.
Oh yeah, okay. So like sort of 50 watt sort of thing. Yeah. Yeah, like a combo. Do you guys have amps at all? No. So yeah, sort of the self-contained combo amps are a good investment. They're loud enough for gigging generally, and small enough to carry around and practice with at home. You might find yourself in need of some different guitar pedals and stuff. Does anyone have any guitar pedals that they have experimented with before? No? Yeah, so you'll pretty much need it if you need to switch between sounds, but like during a song, if you need to change sounds between songs, you can get by just adjusting the sounds on the amp and stuff if it has like built-in effects or distortion and that sort of thing. But generally, I'd recommend using pedals instead, because obviously it looks better to do that rather than turn around and continuously mess around with the amp. But yes, essential if you need to change sounds between, mid-song, because obviously your hands are going to be occupied, so you need to use your feet for it. Different pedal types. We've got distortion pedals, delay pedals, compression pedals, boost pedals. There's so many different types, but those ones are probably some good investments to start with. If you're sort of a lead guitarist, you'll probably want to get some kind of a boost pedal or compression pedal. So when you're playing like a guitar solo, it'll lift the sound of the guitar above everyone else. So if you're playing like rhythm guitar for most of the song, you don't want to be too overbearing, but when you want the solo to come in, you want to be sort of the main focus. So you want to have your sound lift up above everyone. And all you need to do is just step on the boost pedal or the compression pedal or whatever it is. Even if it is just a volume pedal, you can crank it up that way. And then you can be heard easily above other band members. A lot of the time, like I'll go to gigs and there'll be a guitarist who won't have one, and when they go to play a solo, you just can't hear what they're playing, because the single notes just don't cut through as well as the chords do. If you can't be bothered with different pedals, which I can't, and you don't really know, or you don't really know what to buy, I just use like multi-effects units. So like they're basically just these little digital units that are about yay big, and you can sort of have different pedal types built into it, and it's a lot easier to sort of carry that sort of thing around as well. If you don't have like a pedal board or something like that, you can just have one of those effects units. So the ones that I've used in the past, sort of the Boss ME70, the Pod HD 500X, they might be a little bit outdated now, so you might find there are some better options, so it's worth looking into that as well. How are we going for time? 10? how we go. So bigger bands using electric instruments and drum kits, they'll need a more complicated setup than just an acoustic guitar, obviously, as we were talking about amps and that sort of thing. So when you're in contact with the venue owner or event organizer, check what the backline is, so what backline is available. And backline is sound gear that is at the venue that your band might be able to use. So that might be a venue that has live music regularly, so they'll often have bands coming in and out. And it's easier for them and it's easier for the bands if they just have sort of the essential kind of speakers or even guitar amps there already, so you don't have to bring that sort of stuff yourself. And it's good if you want to avoid sort of carrying your amp to the gig, provided you're comfortable using whatever they've got there. Or maybe there'll be another band there that's playing, like if there's more than one band on the night, and you can use, maybe if you ask nicely, you can use what amps they've got, which I've done in the past. And stuff like speaker systems, microphones, generally if it's a live music gig, yeah, they'll have like PA speakers or front of house speakers and microphones that you can use for singers and that sort of thing. But they won't always have guitar amps, so do double check before you don't bring your amp, and then you won't have anything to play through. A lot of these types of venues will have like a sound guy, and they'll be able to control stage volume, set up all the necessary gear like mics and that sort of thing. They might put a mic in front of your guitar amp or your acoustic guitar. When playing professionally at functions and corporate gigs, sort of going back to that, again, because it's sort of, that's at a higher sort of level, you're more expected to bring all of the band necessities yourself. So, speakers, mics, amps, mixing desks, all that sort of thing that you'll need. Or mixing consoles rather, not a full desk. Foldback speakers, does anyone know what a foldback speaker is? Michelle, have you encountered those before?
I can't remember, no.
It's sort of like the wedge speakers that you'll have like at the front of the stage. If you've ever been to like a live show before, they'll have these speakers down the front of the band. These can be a handy thing to have yourself. So what they do is they let you basically hear the sound of you and everyone else really easily, because it all sort of goes into the desk and sort of out those speakers straight at you, so you can hear everything really clearly. So you need to keep in mind that the sound of a stage is very different to the sound of a rehearsal room. And this is because everyone's going to be facing one direction. If you're in a rehearsal room, everyone's sort of usually like in a circle or whatever, and everyone's pointing at everyone else. You can sort of hear it pretty clearly, what everyone's doing, but not so easy on a stage where everyone's sort of lined up and all the sound is going out that way. So that's why foldback speakers are a good idea, because the sound will sort of, the sound guy will sort it out probably. I'm not hugely familiar with how all of this stuff works, but speaking as a guitar player, like if my guitar amp is mic'd up, like if it has a microphone in front of it, the sound will go into that, and then it'll just magically come out of the speaker in front of me. So it really helps to be able to hear what you're playing, obviously, so you can sort of play confidently. So yeah, it's not always easy to hear your amp if it's sort of low down, if you've got it on the floor. So a good investment is an amp stand, which is something that I've got, and that lets you sort of put your amp up on sort of the stand itself, and it sort of puts it at an angle, so it's sort of raised up, and it points sort of directly at you, ideally. And sort of, I guess this is kind of a good alternative to a foldback speaker if you don't have one or you don't want to get one for yourself. You can get one of these, and it's good for rehearsals as well, because you can set it up there too. If you don't have one of those, maybe bring just like a milk crate or some sturdy container that you can prop your amp up on, so you get that sound sort of travelling up towards you. Or if you have like a big speaker cabinet for your amp, if you have one of those big like 4x12s, you might not need to actually do that, but it's still a good idea to have it raised up above stage level, so you sort of do get that sound travelling up towards you rather than sort of underneath your feet, so you can't hear it. Mixing consoles are a good idea for bigger acts if you have 3 or 4 plus members, so it's something to just think about. That just lets you control sort of the volume of all the band members easily. If there's a sound guy at the venue, he'll take care of all of that stuff. But again, if you're sort of providing all of the things for the event sound-wise, you'll probably need one of those too. Also, buy a foldable trolley. If you've got some heavy gear to carry, you'll probably want to buy one of those, because you're never going to be sure how far away from the venue you're going to be parking or whatever. So there's a good chance at some point you'll need to carry something a fair distance, like a guitar amp, and that's not very fun to do. So get yourself a trolley for that. A foldable trolley, easy to put in the car in with everything else, and then you can unfold it and fold it back up at the gig. So for every gig you play as well, sort of a general thing, always bring at least one guitar lead, like a spare lead, I should have said. Bring a lead and then a spare lead, or if you need more than one lead, bring 2 spare ones, as many as you've got. Spare set of strings as well, and also some spare guitar picks in case you drop one on stage and have them ready to pick up somewhere. So playing gigs, again, know the material, practice it, listen to the songs as well. Does anyone have any questions about the gear stuff? No? Yes, so when you're playing the gigs, it's good to make sure that you know the material inside out. So yeah, listen to the songs, practice a lot if you can. Not just with the band, but by yourself at home. If everyone learns their material at home, rehearsals will be quick and painless, and the whole thing will go smoothly, rehearsals and gigs included. Make sure that all of the gear is sorted out beforehand so everyone knows the setup and arrival time at the venue. The last thing you want is to be stressed out at the gig because the drummer is running late, or someone doesn't have a piece of gear, like you don't have a guitar amp or something like that, which wouldn't be good. So do you guys have any, not necessarily music performing experience, but any kind of performing experience at all? Reese? No, you guys, have you done any kind of maybe drama performances or anything like that? Music performances? Michelle, you have with singing? So I guess if you haven't really done it before, it can be a little bit intimidating, the idea of playing in front of people. And you might get stage fright, that sort of thing. So as I was saying right at the start, you want to start small and build up from there. So play in front of your family, your parents, play in front of your friends, build up to maybe doing some, if you're a student at school or whatever, which you guys aren't, but... Oh, how old are you, Reese? So you're still at high school? Yeah. So there might be some opportunities for talent shows, Battle of the Bands, that sort of thing. They're pretty low stakes gigs because it's a school thing, and obviously we have concerts here at Ben Plant Guitar as well, so they're good opportunities to get in some performance practice. And then there's if you want to move into more public gigs, there's still some low risk public gigs, busking, playing at markets, and these are a good step for testing the waters for your material in a public setting. Open mic nights as well, jam sessions that are sometimes run by music stores at various venues around town. There's that Weekend Warriors thing, I think it is, that does that still happen?
I think it is. I think someone else took it over.
Yeah, but that's usually good. There's also some improv nights and that sort of thing where you can get up and play whatever you like. In terms of general performance tips, if you make a mistake during a song, I guess the golden rule is don't stop playing, and the other thing is don't make it obvious that you made a mistake by scrunching your face up, making a noise of exertion or something like that. If you do that, then everyone in the room is going to know that you made a mistake, whereas if you don't do that, maybe a couple of people will notice and everyone else won't notice. So crowd work is the other thing. Talking to the audience, engaging the audience. This might not be super necessary if you have a singer or a front man who isn't you. You can takes the pressure off you a little bit to engage the audience with some, talking. You can keep it short if you are sort of the front man, you can keep it short, tell them who you are, introduce a couple of songs. If it's a background music gig, you probably won't need a whole lot of crowd work because you're not going to be sort of the centre of attention. Bigger gigs where you are the centre of attention, you might need a little bit more engagement with the audience. But by the stage you're playing those bigger gigs, you're probably more than comfortable talking to an audience, so it probably won't be a problem by that point. The other thing goes without saying, dress appropriately for the gig. Usually if it's just like a bar or a pub gig, you can wear whatever you like, but if it's sort of a more professional thing, like a function or something, you probably don't want to rock up in jeans and a flannel shirt. It doesn't look great. If it is like an event like that, maybe double check with the event organizer if they have any sort of specific clothing that they want you to wear, like any kind of nice clothes or that sort of thing. But yeah, that's just something to think about. Any questions with all the playing aspects? All good? The last thing, I guess, that some of you might be interested in, some of you might not be interested in, is the money aspect of playing gigs, getting paid if you want to make a living out of it. So I won't go too far into this. If you're playing a paid gig, you might be paid by the venue or the event management on the same day, or at a later date digitally or via mail. Usually if you haven't been paid within like a week after the gig, you probably want to chase it up because yes, it might get left by the wayside. So make sure you have the contact details for the venue owner or event organizer. How much should you get paid for a gig? I guess if you're playing like a standard pub or bar gig and you're sharing the night with a couple of other acts, you just take what you're given. So maybe that'll be a cut of the door ticket sales or drink sales or something like that. Some venues will pay like a flat amount, so it'll vary depending on the venue. It's hard to say what you will get on average, but yes. In the case of the more professional gigs, functions, corporate events, you're hiring yourself out to provide the entertainment. So you should have a pretty reasonable say in what you're actually getting paid. Or rather, what they're going to be spending on music. So take things such as hours spent rehearsing into account, personal expenses for gear, rehearsal rooms, hiring out rehearsal rooms. Take into account the time and energy you'll be spending performing and also packing up and packing down on the night. And obviously if you're playing like longer sets or if you're playing 3 sets, you should be getting paid more than if you were just playing 1 set, that goes without saying. Consider the nature of the gig as well. So if you're playing for a lawyer's Christmas party at a fancy hotel or like a golf club or something like that, you'll probably be expected to be paid more than if you were playing at a 60th birthday party, like a family thing at a community hall. So keep that in mind when you're sort of thinking about pricing. Take the budget of the event into consideration. Some events will probably have like a designated budget for entertainment, which you might not be privy to that information, but I guess it doesn't hurt to ask and sort of get an idea of what they're willing to pay and what you're willing to sort of negotiate. If you receive an offer and you feel like it isn't enough, don't be afraid to negotiate higher, but be realistic because you don't want them to just say, oh well, that's too much, we're not going to give you the gig now. So sort of, it's a bit of a balance. Overall, it's important, I think, not to undervalue yourself because I think musicians can be taken advantage of a little bit when it comes to getting paid. Some people don't really consider the hours of work that goes into preparing for a gig, especially at a professional standard, because you're not just being paid for the time that you're on stage, which I think is something that a lot of people forget. If you're playing a big gig with a lot of preparation involved, it doesn't hurt to ask for a deposit beforehand so you are covered if something changes. For example, if there's a cancellation, I was in a situation recently where I was with just a one-time band. We were doing covers for I think it was a lawyer's gig or something like that, but we spent 3 or 4 weeks learning and rehearsing all this material for it. It was pretty much all new stuff that we hadn't done before. And then probably the week before we did it, they got in touch with us and said they changed their minds and that they were hiring a DJ instead of a band. So we were basically just left in the lurch there. We'd done all this work, and then they basically just changed their minds at the last minute. So we wasted a whole bunch of our time. So yeah, when we played a gig for them again, we made sure to ask for a deposit. I'm not sure why we played for them again, but we did. Let's just, I guess, wrapping up a little bit. If maybe you are in it for the money, maybe you're just doing it for fun. Maybe it's both. Work out what you want from playing music. So you and any people that you're collaborating with are all on the same page, because you don't want to get into a situation where there's a bit of friction in regards to money, which usually there will be in some respect. Making money playing music is hard work. Making a living playing music is even harder. You'll need to put in a lot of hours of practice and rehearsal to reach a professional standard where you can actually do that. But don't be put off by no means. Like any skill, playing and performing music in front of people is something that you'll get better the more you do it. So keep at it, yeah, and don't be put off by anything that I've said today, for that matter. So does anyone have any questions? I think that's all I've got to say. I think we pretty much hit the hour, which is good. Can anyone think of anything that they might want to ask?
Where did you start?
What's that?
Where did you start?
Where did I start? Just in general, like playing guitar or gigging specifically? I think the first gig I played was, well, it was probably just like school gigs. So doing Battle of the Bands. I think the first actual thing that I did live was like I think I was 13 maybe. I did a Battle of the Bands at school, at high school. In terms of like professional gigs outside of that, I think I started doing those when I was studying music at Box Hill TAFE. So I think the first one I did was just it was a pretty low-key function, like I think it was for a rowing club or something like that. But yeah, once you're in that, like if you do study music outside of, once you finish school or whatever, it gets quite easy to make contacts because everyone's looking to do the same thing. They're all sort of looking to play gigs and stuff, so it is quite easy to get into that circle once you do, enter into an academic setting when it comes to music. Even somewhere like here as well, you've got a whole bunch of people who are looking to do the same thing, so you can usually get some people together that way. So yeah, I guess that's where I started out, playing live stuff. Yeah. Anyone else?